Welcome, everyone. This is Abby Gooch with the Intuition to Income Global Summit, and we are coming towards the end of this amazing series. I was just talking to Robert that we have interviewed 29 people from all over the world, and he is somebody that is just so exciting to have towards the end of this because he's just such a powerful, heart-centered man. And he's somebody who has really taken intuition and used it in his life. He's a successful author, and he's going to be talking to us about how we can use our intuition to manifest and also to use it in our parenting. So kind of two different subjects, but all tied together and really bringing us deeper into our core and representing who we are at the deepest level. So Robert, if you could introduce yourself to our audience, I would love that, and we will get this conversation started.
Cool. Well, I am thrilled. We were just saying before we started the formal here how excited I was to be here. Ever since you and I met, I've been really feeling connected to you, and I love what you're doing with this summit, and congratulations on getting 30 of us to join you on it. It's fabulous. For people who don't know me, I live in San Diego, California. I am the former director of training for Jack Canfield's company. Most people know who Jack is through his work with the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series, which was an amazing success, but I actually worked with him on the training side of his business for a number of years. He was an amazing mentor and teacher for me. I'm a founding member of a group called the Transformational Leadership Council, which has been an amazing opportunity to connect with some of the truly great, some really well-known, some not so well-known, but truly great minds in the personal and professional development industry. I have my own book called Manifesting for Non-Gurus, which I wrote, which is a simple way for people to attract more of the results that they want in their lives more quickly and easily. And as you said, it was interesting, we kind of drifted into the parenting conversation. I'm also the very proud father of 3 amazing children, and one of the things I told Jack for many years in my work with him was that his work had the single biggest impact in my life in the area of being a parent, being a father. I know being in conversations like we're going to be in today about intuition and about responsibility and commitment and things like that really has had a profound impact on the kind of father that I've been and on the way that my children have grown up. So that's something else that's really important to me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Robert. So how has intuition played a role in your life?
Well, it's interesting because I did not grow up in an environment that encouraged intuition. I have a very well-developed left brain from growing up. It was very much, reason and structure and thinking things through and figuring things out, and that's still very much my hard wiring. But over the years, really, not until I was in my early 40s, late 30s, that kind of age, where I really began to learn the power of intuition and to expand the possibilities of what I could accomplish in my life and what kind of experience I could have in my life if I got out of my left brain, if I just learned how to quiet down that conversation going on in my left brain to not have that need to figure everything out and be willing to be more trusting, to listen. I remember when I was first taught about meditation, and meditation to me was like some crazy, goofy, Far Eastern thing that weird people did. And I learned some very simple forms of meditation that were very powerful for me and just allowed me to quiet my mind, and in quieting my mind, open up to what I call intuition, to start to receive what I call the 3 I's, ideas and insights and intuition that I just wasn't receiving before because my mind was so busy chatter, chatter, chatter. So literally in every area of my life, I talked a little bit about being a parent, but I'm also always been an entrepreneur. I've had a number of businesses and business. Intuition has been very important to me in terms of getting insights about where to go, who to work with, who not to work with, really trusting and inner knowing, even when the evidence might suggest that someone was a really good person to work with. Sometimes I would just have a really strong inner feeling that it was a no instead of a yes, and that was something I never used to trust, but I've learned to trust, and it has served me incredibly well. And I think also in the area of health, and I have a good friend and mentor by the name of Jim Bunch who teaches a formula called Happy, Healthy, Wealthy, that if we look at our lives and just look at the area of happiness, which largely has to do with relationships, health, and then wealth, that we can live a pretty satisfied life. And I think intuition plays a really important role when it comes to health as well. We get bombarded with advertising and messages telling us what we should eat, and so often we look at those things and we see that they're really not what's good for us. And intuitively, I think we know what's really good for us, but we have to really tap into that intuition. And just as I was talking about quieting my mind, I think in the area of health and wellness, often we have to quiet the marketplace. We have to quiet that bombardment of all the advertisers out there telling us, eat this, drink that, you'll be, happier and surrounded by beautiful women if you only drink this beer or whatever. And so I think it's another area where really trusting our intuition really serves us well.
Yeah. I love what you said, Robert, about quieting the mind so you can receive those ideas, those insights, and inspirations. I think you said, maybe I added that. That's usually how it comes for me, is the inspiration. I just feel the energy and it just moves. But you really do have to get to this place of stillness. And for me, it's not necessarily body stillness, it's mind stillness, because I have so much energy, I'll go run and move my body, but my mind becomes still. So I would love for you to share more about how people can reach that place of stillness in their mind where they can feel and hear their intuitive guidance.
Right. Well, and I totally agree with you about exercise. I've always been an athlete myself, and I've run marathons and been a runner for many years. And I tell people I don't particularly like to run. I don't like the act of running. But what I do like is the effect that it has on me, that it really does have that mind-clearing, mind-calming effect. And you were kind of saying, kind of separating the mind and the body, and I believe in some ways that's true, but I believe it's also true that the mind is very closely connected to the body. I was just in a workshop this past weekend. We had the experience, or the opportunity rather, to, in a one-on-one kind of a partner exercise, we were exploring fears that might come up and get in the way of what we really want to accomplish in our life. And part of the process was to identify where in the body that fear was showing up. And I had a really profound experience. I actually thought about this conversation afterwards and was looking forward to sharing it with you, because in the process of talking about fear, my fear showed up in my right shoulder, like the back of my right shoulder. And in the process of my partner asking me why that was, it became really clear to me, again, in a very intuitive way, just asking questions and being open-minded and listening for answers. The answer that came very clearly to me was that I was spending too much time in my left brain. Like I said, that's kind of the way I'm hardwired. And the fact that, my body, the right side of my body is connected to my left brain, the left side of my body is connected to my right brain. So the fact that this pain, not really pain, it was more of just like a tightness, a stress that was showing up in my right shoulder, was a really clear message that I wouldn't have heard unless I had paused and really listened for those answers. It was telling me that I was spending too much time in my left brain. And as I became aware of that, just in the awareness, it began to diminish. And as I consciously shifted my attention, as I quieted my mind and allowed myself to just open up, I could literally just feel that stress, that tightness in my shoulder. It was just like it was melting away. So I think it's really valuable to recognize that the body and the mind are really closely connected in what's going on in our minds. Whether it's that left brain figure it out kind of stuff, that will show up in our body. And then a very different sensation will show up, much more of an open, clear, free kind of a sensation will show up if we open up to our intuition. And then the final piece that I would add to that is I think there was something really powerful about having that conversation with another human being. Just as you and I are interacting right now, and there is access to intuition and insights and ideas that just wouldn't be possible if I was trying to figure it out myself, there's something really powerful about connecting with other people. And I think it's really cool that you're doing this summit and facilitating a way for people to do that. You're allowing them to enter into 30 different conversations that will stimulate new ideas and new insights for them, allow them to tap into their own intuition with the help of these different points of view of lots of experts. So another really valuable way, I think, to tap into expertise is to surround yourself with the right kind of people, with supportive, encouraging, positive kind of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Community is so huge. We totally attract who we are, right? So it makes it much easier when we have those wonderful positive reflections, especially of intuition, right? Working with more intuitive people, it's just so fun. It's just like bounce the inspiration off. It's just really fun.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing your experience. It's fascinating, the subject of fear. I was actually just talking to a friend yesterday about it and really understanding what is fear. Is it just a perception, or is it actually real? You know, because we experience, is it a feeling or in our body? You know, but what really is it? You know, and I actually don't have the answer for it. I just know that it does stop us from being the love that we are. You know, the energy. So yeah, I'm curious if you have any other thoughts about that. I just think it is a fascinating conversation.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that was exactly, as we were in this conversation about fear, I was kind of asking myself that same question, like, wait a minute, what is fear? You know, again, there's my left brain hardwiring showing up, wanting to figure it out. And in my mind, fear is simply imagining an outcome that doesn't work for us. It's imagining the negative consequences. It's I forget who said it, but somebody says, you know, fear is just basically negative goal setting. It's imagining the outcomes that we don't want. And this workshop that I was in had a very different perspective on fear, and I think it did a really wonderful job of getting me to kind of step back and disassociate a little bit from the fear and become an observer of the fear rather than feeling so attached to it. And the approach that he was teaching was, when you're looking at creating a new outcome, when you're looking at creating change in your life, there's some desired result you're pursuing. He was saying that if your intuition says yes, like you're getting a strong yes from your intuition that this is something good to do, and then your rational mind is pretty much in agreement, like it's willing to go along, right? You know, it's also giving you a yes, but your fear is saying no, and sometimes screaming no. He says that that's the best way to tell that you're absolutely on track, on purpose. This is the path you should be following. If intuition says yes, if your rational mind says yes, and your fear is screaming no, that's the time to go for it, because the fears are just made up. You know, I think ultimately that's the most powerful thing to realize about fear, is it's totally made up. And when we step back and observe it, just as we can be, you know, imagining these outcomes that don't work for us, we can imagine other outcomes as well. We can imagine that it's going to work out just the way we want. Right. So there's certainly some value in fear, and sometimes it protects us, but in a lot of cases, you know, there's no more saber-toothed tigers running around that we have to be afraid of. And being afraid that someone might say no, or being afraid that they might judge us, or all those kinds of fears are really just totally made up, and in many cases really getting in our way and preventing us from accomplishing what we want to accomplish and having the experience of life that we really want to be having. So I think for me the powerful thing was that awareness of stepping back away from the fear and being kind of the observer and saying, isn't that interesting? What's the source of that? How does that serve me? Is that really true? I love the work of Byron Katie. I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Byron Katie. One of the questions she teaches is, when that kind of fear and that kind of emotion comes up, to ask yourself, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? And you go, well, no, it's made up. And then you make a choice. You know, does it serve you? How does it serve you? How does it not serve you? And now you're in motion. You're towards solution. You're making things happen, as opposed to being in paralysis.
Right. Wow, I love what you said. It's just so true. It's so in alignment with the conversations I've been having with myself lately, really, and just feeling it is like fear. It's exactly what you say, is you can have an intuitive knowing and still be afraid. And my teachers have actually taught me, when you feel the fear, do it anyways. And I was like, well, if we have fear, like, I just didn't understand it, right? If it's trying to protect us, then why would we do it anyways? And I came to the exact same conclusion you did, which is it's a perceived perception that isn't real, that hasn't even happened, that is probably in the past or the future. It's somewhere not here, because in the moment we have everything we need. So I definitely got to that same place, and it's like, yeah, it feels right in your gut. It's intuitively correct. It makes sense. It's in alignment with what you want. But the fear, I think, is usually the resistance. It's like, to get to the next level, we have to break through an old pattern, right? We're letting go of some aspect of us, probably our personality, that doesn't want to be let go of because it's familiar, you know, but it may not be serving to go where we want to go. You know, it's just my thought. I don't know what your thought is, but that is what I've seen working with students for, 11 plus years, and working with myself, is it's like there's a certain level of, you get here, and then to go there, you have to let go of control and fear and a lot of different things to really surrender to the all that you are. You know?
Right. Well, and I think I've heard the same thing you were talking about, that whole, feel the fear and do it anyway. And it sounds great, right? And it's really motivational and all that. But there's a part of me that says, well, wait a minute, there's a reason for that fear. And, what if it's very, very well grounded. And I think the step that's sometimes missing is feel the fear, welcome the fear, acknowledge the fear, but assess the fear. To me, it's a stepping back. Instead of, going right through the fear, step back, observe, kind of assess the fear, and if it truly is made up, and if there truly are, so many. I mean, I see people who let small fears, what will my mother think, get in the way of their dreams. They do work with me. The first question in my book is about who am I? What am I really here to do? What are my most important values? What's my purpose? What's the contribution I'm here to make? And we get people really deeply connected to what is most important to them and what they really want to do. And then they say, well, I don't know if I can do that because what will my mother think? And to me, that's crazy. Because first of all, your mother will probably be thrilled if you really are on purpose and you create a huge success doing what you really want to do. But second of all, are you really going to let what your mother thinks get in the way of your dream, of what's most important to you? And to me, that's what's so crazy about fears. If I'm, getting ready to jump out of an airplane without a parachute and there's fear, that's a really valuable fear, I think. When I assess that one, I might come to a different conclusion. Maybe I'll wait till the parachute guy gets here, then I'll jump. But so many of the fears that I see, and I do coaching and consulting and speaking and work with individuals and work with groups, and for the most part, and you said it yourself, in our own lives first, we look in the mirror and see how it's working for us, and then for those of us that have been doing this kind of work for a number of years, as both of you and I have, we look at the examples from our clients' lives as well. And I see over and over again that the fears that are really getting in my way, the fears that are really getting in most of my clients' ways, are totally made up. They're imaginary, and it's just not necessary. It's not anything that we really should be letting get in our way. And if we're willing to step back, assess those fears, recognize them for what they are, and then move forward in spite of them, which is kind of a long, complicated version of feel the fear and do it anyway, we end up on the other side of the fear going, really? I mean, I can't think of how many times I've looked back on a fear and said, really? I let that stop me. For months or years or whatever, I let that stop me. And it was imaginary. It was nothing.
Yeah, I think the really important discernment piece is it intuition or fear, right? So like you say, to get objective, to look at the fear, and then say, what does my intuition tells me about it? Because it's like, I also know there's a lot of wisdom in following your intuition and not acting sometimes, like if you get guidance not to, regardless of if there's fear or not. Just get a really clear gut check, a really clear knowing. What does my gut say? And move into that place, and then you actually come from such a solid foundation that when you're seeing the fear, it's so much easier to see it than get wrapped into it. You just really create this solid base for yourself. So that's really what I would recommend. And the other thing I wanted to say is so funny is yesterday is like your parachute example. Like we were driving and I was telling my friend, I was like, fear exists for a reason, because if everybody slams on their brakes right now, I'm going to feel fear and I'm going to put my foot on the brake. Like it definitely has a purpose, So
yes. Yeah.
It goes back to like everything, the body and mind and emotions, everything works together. Like it's meant to be in harmony. So what is it telling you? What is the fear telling you? What's the message? And then to just keep moving back into your center. That's really where I feel the key is.
Right. And I've really enjoyed, I haven't had a chance to go through all the previous interviews, but I've been going through the previous interviews that you've been doing around this conversation about intuition. And one of the most fascinating topics that keeps coming up over and over again, and you just kind of touched on it, was the difference between intuition and fear. And I think it's one of the things that prevents people from really trusting their intuition is they don't feel like they know whether it's really their intuition or not. And it's a difficult question, and it really does, in my experience, require trust. And the reality is, in any given moment, I might get into a really deep, quiet place, and I'm really blessed. I've had the opportunity to do some really deep inner work, and I can pretty quickly get to a place of open-mindedness and be able to access my intuition. But even still, sometimes I go, really? Like that? Are you sure? Like, can I run that one through again? Kind of thing. Yeah. And it so much comes down to trust. I need to trust that that really is my intuition that's guiding me, instead of that crazy voice in my head that sometimes suggests that I do some pretty wacky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's definitely one of those things in my experience that's more of a journey than a destination. It's not like you wake up one day and all of a sudden, the intuition is talking like a woman and the crazy voice is talking like a man, and you can always tell the difference. It's sometimes pretty hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But I just go back to trust myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think the question comes to, what are you trusting? So again, it's the discernment. So what is intuition and what is fear? So I'd love to see what your take is on that. I definitely have mine, but I'd love to see how you're seeing the difference, because it can get kind of muddy. You're like, well, it's my fear. Well, was it my intuition or my fear, right? So where's that line for you? And then, of course, I love to talk and I'll share mine, but this is about you, so go.
I get to go first. Well, I think of two things. One is I like to use my body as like a measuring device, as a way to sense what is intuition and what is fear. Because when I'm receiving intuition, there's very much of an openness and a calm and a peaceful sense in my body. And when it's fear, and again, fear can be really valuable, but when it's fear, it shows up differently. It shows up much more as a tightening, as a shutting down, as a closing down feeling, as opposed to that opening that shows up. There's some wonderful work out there about using our body and how we can literally measure and detect things like what direction we should take and whether we should follow a certain message that we're getting. Is it our intuition or is it something different? The other thing is, sometimes when you're like in a department store and there's a mirror in front of you, but there's also a mirror behind you. So you're seeing in the mirror the image in the mirror behind you, and it's like looking down a hallway. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what intuition is like. When I get an intuitive sense, I pause and I check in with whether I can trust that intuition or not. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because in that moment, I'm basically I'm asking my intuition whether I can trust my intuition. And yeah. It's like those mirrors, like it's just layer after layer after layer, but at some point you get a really clear sense. You can trust your intuition about whether this is your intuition. And you can go crazy with that and never make a decision, but that's been my experience, that you really can, because sometimes in my experience, intuition shows up sometimes when we're not asking for it. It's the whole, we all get our best ideas when we're in the shower kind of thing. And, we don't have any way to write it down. I don't know. It's crazy. You have to try and remember. But sometimes intuition shows up at really interesting and unpredictable times. And when it does for me, I tend to literally check in with my intuition about whether that's really my intuition, or whether I'm remembering a dream I had last night, or whether I'm having a deja vu or what. So that's the other thing for me, is kind of that mirror idea of trusting your intuition to let you know whether this is your intuition or not, as crazy as that might sound.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And now I want to hear your answer.
Well, it definitely relates to yours. I've always experienced my intuition as a gut feeling, which is in the body, so it's a very strong gut feeling. And for me, I either experience it as a no, which, like you said, is usually very constrictive, or a yes, which is very expansive. So I just listen, and if it feels good, then I move forward, and if it doesn't, then I don't, So it's really pretty simple. The discernment piece, I think, it's almost like asking yourself why. Do I not feel good because it's not right, like it doesn't feel right in my gut, or because I'm afraid of it? So I just feel the energy of fear, and I'm like, fear, feels kind of chaotic, it's darker, it's crazy. Intuition is very calm. So I notice the frequencies, and we can all feel energetic frequencies because we notice how they make our body feel, like you said, right? So it's like, am I knowing, or is this fear? And if it's fear, I too always look at it. It's like, okay, well, what am I afraid of and why? And usually it boils down to some perception, and I'm like, forget that. Like, what's true here? And I just move forward with truth because it feels better.
Right.
And I like to feel good. So, and it's funny, the better you feel, the better people around you feel, and it just ripples. So I feel like that's the greatest gift we give ourselves, is to honor who we are and feel really freaking fantastic, you know, and we just ripple that. And that's what's happening on the planet. Like, I'm watching it with new babies being born and the clients coming in. Like, people are so intuitive. Like, we're so tuned in. Whatever's happening, we're just raising our vibration, you know, because we all feel it. So it's like you said, it's trust. It's like, are you trusting what feels good and letting go of what doesn't, because you don't need it.
Well, and I think you touched on something with intuition. It's been interesting. We were talking before we actually formally started about how I was in another conversation online yesterday that went in the direction of intuition. So this is like intuition week for me. But it's interesting how intuition is associated with women many times. That, you know, you hear the expression women's intuition. And I believe, and I admit to being biased, but I certainly believe that men have just as much ability to tap into their intuition. But I think what you were talking about the feeling and emotional component of intuition, and that it is necessary to be willing to go to that place of checking in with your feelings and emotions as a way to access your intuition and really determine what is your intuition. So women, that's a very natural thing to do, I think. It's something that women are encouraged to do. But in our society, it's not something that men are encouraged to do. It's something, in fact, that men are encouraged not to do. That if we're accessing our feelings and if we're open about our feelings, that it's really a sign of weakness, is the way it's often perceived. And I believe that's shifting, which I believe is really valuable. But I think that's why the idea of intuition often gets associated with women, why women probably have an easier time accessing their intuition. And, you know, I go back to my book because it's really the foundation of the coaching that I do, the speaking that I do, most of the work that I do. And one of the critical steps in the book is about accessing your feelings and emotions. It's asking yourself a question: how will I feel? I set a goal, I set an intention, I have a change I want to create in my life. Well, how will that make me feel? And people who are willing to take just a little bit of time and check in and access the feeling and emotion behind more money or losing weight or finding their ideal soulmate for a relationship, whatever it might be, how will that feel? I see over and over again in my own life and with people I work with, the people who are willing to just take a little bit of time, not all day, just a little bit of time, to not only ask and answer that question, but really experience the feeling. If I will be excited when I double my income, just give myself 30 seconds to just really feel that excitement. And when people do that, it creates amazing results. And again, I think it has a really close connection, this whole concept of intuition, and not just accessing your intuition, but fully experiencing your intuition and getting the full benefit of having a deeper connection to your intuition.
Yeah, we just interviewed Christy Whitman, and she's like this New York Times best-selling author. You know, she's done a lot of work in the world, and she actually said the same thing. She said your emotions are actually you communicating with you. So just listen, and you're put in that flow, you know, and that alignment. So it's definitely right in alignment. We're all saying the same thing, which to me is like a sign of truth. Like, we're on the right path, you know. If we're all like in agreement, like, we're probably all doing the same thing. So it feels really good to bring light to that. Robert, I know that we're like already halfway through the interview because we could talk all day. So I want to make sure that we cover how to use intuition to manifest. So how would you describe that process in the amount of time we have for the next few minutes, you know, of how people could do that?
Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting. You know, my book is Manifesting for Non-Gurus, and it's kind of become an area that I get identified with. And at the same time, when I'm working with organizations, that word manifesting has this like magical woo-woo kind of feel to it, and it really isn't so welcomed. And I bring that up because I just want to clarify, in my mind, manifesting is not some magical, mysterious kind of process, you know, that we somehow meditate our way to success. That, you know, if we just light the right number of candles, put on the right music, and hold our hands the right way, and chant the right mantra, everything will come magically to us. You know, sometimes that's what people think of with manifesting. I believe that manifesting is very, very practical. The fifth step of the approach I teach is about taking inspired action, which is kind of the exclamation point on the fact that you can't just meditate your way to success. And the steps of the approach that I teach, where intuition comes into play in a really big way, are the first step, which is asking ourselves who we really are, like what's really important to me. And to me, if we're not willing and able to tap into our intuition to ask that question, then we're never going to get beyond the real surface level of what that question brings up. We do an exercise with people where they sit across from a partner and someone asks you the question, who are you? Over and over again. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And you answer over and over and over again with different answers. And what happens for most people is the surface answers come up about the roles that they play. You know, I'm a father, I'm a runner, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach. And then as the exercise goes on, the person keeps asking and asking, and you have to go deeper. And as I've been working with that question with exercises and activities like that, and using it in my coaching and using the journal that I created to go with my book, the level that I've come to is that who I really am is pure, unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And an answer like that comes from a very intuitive place, from a very deep intuitive place in my experience. Now, I always feel like I have to put an asterisk on that. When I share that with people in a live audience, I see people's eyes kind of bug out like, wow, this guy leads his life from a place of pure, unconditional love. And that's my intention, and that is who I believe I really am. But I live in the real world. You know, I live in Southern California. I drive in traffic. I have 3 teenagers. I have my own business. I don't live my life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from a place of pure, unconditional love. It doesn't work that way. However, having accessed my intuition and connected to that sense of who I really am, when what's showing up in my life is not pure, unconditional love, when it's anger or fear or stress or whatever, I have the ability to recognize that really quickly and course correct really quickly, move in the direction of being more loving, giving more love, being open to receiving more love. So to me, that's the real value of it. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the approach that I teach to manifesting, that's one area where I think it's really, really important to access intuition. The other area where I think it shows up really, really powerfully is when we are identifying what it is we really want. The question that I use is, what am I intending to attract? And if we want to be manifesting anything in our life, it's important to be really clear what it is we want to manifest. And again, if we're asking the question from a deeply intuitive place, then we're going to get answers that are really in alignment with who we are, that are in alignment with what's most important to us. And what I see many people doing if they're not willing or able to access their intuitive voice is that they're manifesting what other people want for them. When they say, what do I want? What do I want to create in my life? They use other people's measuring sticks. They use other people's guidelines as the criteria for what they're going to try and create more of or attract more of in their life, rather than what's most important to them. And when people, like we talked about at the beginning, are willing to pause, come to a space of open-mindedness and ask a question like, what am I intending to attract from that place, versus from the hectic, crazy kind of life we sometimes lead, we get very different answers. So in terms of manifesting, I believe if people are willing to tap into their intuition to get really clear about who they really are, and then also get clear about what it is that they're intending to attract and make sure that's in alignment with who they really are, then the other steps of the approach that I teach are the feeling step that we talked about, which just anchors us in even more deeply. And then we have a step called letting go of attachments, which most of the time, I mean, being open to our intuition is always helpful, but I don't think it's as critical. It's more an awareness question of what's showing up and getting in our way. I think it connects more to the conversation we were having about the fear that shows up, the imaginary obstacles that we put up for ourselves, and letting those go. And then the final step is taking action. And if people are taking action, having tapped into their intuition, gotten really clear, connected to their feelings, and let go of attachments, to me, that's how manifestation really works. And when we are clear and when we are focused in all 5 of those areas, I'm clear about who I am, I'm clear about my intentions, I'm connected to the feelings and emotions I most want to experience, I'm aware of the attachments that show up and get in my way, and I'm willing and able to let go of those attachments, and I take consistent action, for me, for my clients, life works pretty well when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Oh,
So that's like manifestation in a nutshell. How's that?
that's beautiful. My heart is like singing as you're talking. I could just feel it like fluttering because it's truth. And like that's another intuitive thing is, you know, we go into more intuitive development and the club I'll be telling everybody about later. It's like you start getting more intuitive and the feelings get stronger. So it doesn't just feel good for me. It actually feels like this fluttering excitement, you know, like butterflies. So I love it because it's so true, and I've practiced it since I was 19. Like, I know how it works, but to hear the steps and then to know that anybody that follows those steps can replicate it, like, what a gift. Thank you for being so generous and giving us all that, because it really is that simple, you know?
Well, it can be. And, you know, I look at, you know, those 5 steps that I talk about, you know, it sounds like kind of a linear process. But it's also a very deep process. You know, you can look at any one of those steps that we kind of skimmed over. And, you know, I do a 2.5-day weekend workshop where we do nothing except dive into the deep levels of each of those 5 steps. And we spend almost a whole day on that question, who am I? You know, it's just a deep, like a silo kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is simple. And one of the greatest compliments I get, one of the ones that just lights me up, is when people are exposed to my work, they read the book, they use the journal, whatever it is, and they contact me and they say, thank you for making it so simple. Now I really see how I can implement this.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the highest praise for my work, because that's what I want people to do. I joke about the fact that the journal was created so the book wouldn't be called what's called shelf help. You've heard of shelf help, right? Where people buy the book, they never read it, they just stick it on the shelf, and nothing ever happens. And to me, like, this book and this work that I'm doing feels divinely guided. It feels totally in alignment with my purpose in life, what I'm here to do. So if I, you know, sell a lot of books, but I know that people aren't reading them, they're just sticking them on the shelf, it literally breaks my heart. Like, I have to know that people are putting it into action, that they're implementing it. And that really is how the journal was created, and why the journal was created, was to give people a way to specifically implement the content, the information that's in the book. And I know from my interaction with you that you share that kind of commitment to not just sharing information, but see that people are really implementing it and making it happen in their lives. That's what makes this work so rewarding, I believe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's like, it's not even the money, right? It's like the results that you see. It's like, I was talking to my business coach about it, and it's like, we're all motivated from such a place of love and connection and integrity. And so it's like, when you're in that field and that community, like, it's just so fun, you know, because you realize that we're all cheering each other on, and we're giving each other the tools, you know, that we all need, you know, just to succeed together. So it's just so beautiful. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. So, all right. So I'd love for you to share about how you are using your intuition with parenting, and then I'm sure you're also using your steps around, you know, manifesting with how to be a better parent. So what is it that you'd love to share, you know, with the audience? I know there's a lot of people that have kids. So what's coming to you about that, Robert?
Well, it's showing up in my life in a really, really big way. I told you I spent a lot of years working closely with Jack Canfield, and that, you know, really the biggest impact Jack's work had on my life was as a parent. And I'm getting, again, back to intuition, I'm getting a very strong intuitive hit, a very strong calling right now to do more work in the area of helping men be really great dads. I see how rewarding it's been for me. I have my 3 kids now are 21, 19, and 16, and they're all just amazing. You know, I know as parents we always say that, but you know, my kids, they're very capable, they're very confident, they're doing really, really well, and they're just great people. Not just what they're accomplishing, but who they are. They're really great people, and I think as a parent, that's very rewarding for me, and I want that for other parents. And I see parents who are frustrated. I see parents who don't have the kind of relationships that they'd like to have with their children. I see parents whose children are not accomplishing at the level that they're capable of accomplishing, and that's a source of the frustration for the parents. And at the same time, I see for both women and men that we're now required to be really present and active and engaged as parents, but we're also required to do the same thing in the workplace. So for women, I think it's been more visible as women have come into the workplace where they weren't before. The whole dynamic of needing to be really good at both, being, successful in business and a really great parent, has been a dilemma that's been very visible. I think it's been a little less visible for men, but it's the same pattern going the opposite direction, where men used to have this domain called the workplace that they were measured, their success was measured in. And now for men, we have both. I think there's a lot of men out there who are very committed to being a great success in business and also a really great dad. Mm-hmm. And what's showing up for me in my own work, and it's taken a little too long, I wish it had shown up sooner, but it's showing up in a really powerful way right now, that these are the people that I'm here to work with, to share with people how concepts like tapping into your intuition, really understanding responsibility, understanding what it means to be a role model, understanding vision, which to me, I'm seeing that there's 3 really critical steps in this dynamic of being a really great parent and being a really great success in business, and that's number 1, role modeling, number 2, what I'm calling visionary, and number 3 is being a provider. And I think in that area called visionary is where the intuition really shows up. I think about really holding a positive vision for my children and keeping them on course and focused on what's possible versus what limitations might show up for them. And at the same time helping them understand responsibility and consequences and things like that. As parents, to really learn role modeling and what that means, to practice what we preach. I think my kids grew up seeing me continuing to learn, so it was part of what committed them to their own learning. That learning wasn't something that it was just like school you had to get through and then you were done with it. So there's a lot of different components, but I think the intuition piece really shows up in that vision side, that as a parent and as a leader in business, it's really important to have a vision. And where does that vision come from? To me, it comes from intuition. It comes from the things that we've been talking about pausing, the busyness, the craziness, and asking a question. What is my vision for my role as a parent? My vision for what my children are capable of? My willingness to kind of see it from their point of view and ask what is their vision? And then the same thing on the organizational, the business side. What is the vision, the mission, the goals of the company, which is so tied into the success? So all these conversations that we're having today, to me, translate directly to being a really effective parent. If, as a parent, I was doing all the things that we're talking about today, we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm with you about how fast the clock is running. We've covered a lot of ground, but I think if people were to rewind and listen to this again from the point of view of applying it to being a parent, to being a really present and engaged mother or father, we'd see how important it is to be connected to our intuition, to be listening and paying attention.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. It is, I have a lot of really good friends of mine are parents, and we always talk about how it's really the self-love that we have and the way that we are that the kids are modeling after, so mm-hmm. It's like whatever you're doing, they're watching, and the more you love yourself, the more you have to give, so to me that's just the foundation of practicing everything that we've been talking about today is allowing ourselves to love ourselves, because I love what you said about who am I. That question came to me, actually my friend told me that I think 2 or 3 years ago when I got back from my trip to Thailand, and it was like, well, who are you now? Who are you now? And it basically boiled down to I'm just love, and unconditional love actually came a couple of years later when I had to get to that place within myself of truly unconditionally loving myself, and then working from that place for the global work I'm doing now. And it's exactly what I'm up to. And so however we want to do it, it is the core of who we all are, and that's why my heart sings, is it's like, oh, like we're home, like it's walking home, and there's nothing else other than that. It's just fear and illusions, and it's the human process, but the truth is the love, and
yeah.
It's unshakable.
Well, and here's a great example, I think, of intuition and how it shows up, because I told you I've been really powerfully drawn to focus my work on on fathers. You know, that's the role I play, and it's a role that I have some really great evidence in terms of how it's worked really well for me, and some of that I want to share with people. And part of what has shown up is that there are women that I'm letting know that this is what I'm doing, and they're saying, well, what about me? You know, I'm a mom. You know, can this work that you're doing be helpful to me? And in conversations, I'm realizing that it really can. And as you were talking and saying, you know, that you don't yet have children, I'm getting, like, you're probably a really cool aunt, right? Like, to your friends, or I don't know if you have brothers and sisters that have kids. I bet you're probably a really great aunt, right?
You're so funny. Well, I'm actually not an aunt. I'm just laughing so hard because I've adopted most of my students' children, so that's what you're feeling, is every student that has.
Well, yeah, yeah, and I'm not even talking about it like a blood relative, kind of an aunt. I'm just talking about, you know, and my kids have, you know, people that are like aunts and uncles to them that are just, you know, my dearest friends and my wife's dearest friends, that have just really got close relationships. And I think, thank you for that insight. And again, just being in this conversation, being open to it, it's a powerful realization to me that my work, which is focused on fathers, can also be valuable to mothers, and that's already shown up. But in listening to you, it makes me realize that you know, in this role of aunt, I'll just call it aunt, you know, dear friend, you can have a really positive and powerful influence on these children that are growing up and be really supportive to the parents in that role. And I think, again, with the awareness and the knowledge that we're talking about, all these kind of points of view that we're talking about in this conversation can really help someone, even if it's not your own kids, be a really great role model, be someone who really holds a positive vision. I know when I was really involved in my kids' school when they were growing up, and when I was coaching in youth sports, there were a lot of kids who needed someone to share a different vision with them. You know, they had parents who had been telling them their whole life what they're not good at and what they can't do and what their limitations are. You know, I can remember someone showing up for that first soccer practice and proudly announcing that they weren't good at soccer. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Isn't that interesting? That's one vision, but we're going to be working with a different vision here. You know, and I wasn't a father to that person, but it's just, again, thank you for that insight, that it's powerful even really for anyone who has a role in a child's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Robert, I mean, I agree, and I will have kids one day, by the way. I'll let you know.
I know.
But what I did want to say is, whether you have kids or not, you mentioned the word business owner. To me, it's the word leader. It's like you are all leading. So if we're all leaders, bottom line. And however you choose to lead is up to you. But we're so powerful. So everything we do, somebody is watching. You know, unless you're just in your room and never coming out. I'm actually in a room right now, but I'm still talking to you. So even then, like, so we're always interacting. So it's like, what are you leading people towards, you know, like Robert said, with your vision, you know, and it's like, and your energy, like, you know, are you being who you are? So if you really ask yourself, who am I? Are you being that deepest level of love? You know, that's where I have to really move into my center. Okay, am I acting in love? And I actually wait now to take action until I'm in that place of unconditional love. Because if not, I've learned, that it didn't give me the result I wanted. So the pause, you know, the intuitive pause, and to really act from that place of, I wonder who's watching, not from judgment, but I wonder how this is going to be received.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Super fun. Yeah. So, good. Robert, is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we start to wrap up?
Yeah, I want to talk about the prosperity game, where part of the way that you and I originally connected and part of the invitation that I wanted to make to your group. And I think it's a perfect way to kind of wrap up, because so many of the things that we've talked about, one of the things that's often getting in people's way is money. We don't feel like we have the money, we don't have the resources in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And so often the limitations we have in the area of money are self-imposed. And one of the things that I do as part of my work is I facilitate a game that's absolutely free to play and creates amazing breakthroughs for people in terms of their awareness about where they're limiting themselves around money. And real quickly, the game is called the Prosperity Game. You're going to give people a link that they can go to sign up. It's just my website with the /prosperity. And the game is played really simply. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 4 weeks, I send the players a message, and the message has a check. And the game is played by clicking through to a Facebook page and answering 2 questions about the check. Number 1, where did it come from? And number 2, assuming all your debts are paid, which is a profound shift for many people just to imagine that their debts are paid. But the second question is, assuming your debts are paid, what are you going to do with the money? And the insights in the game show up when, with every message I send, with each check I send, the amount doubles. So over the course of 4 weeks, 3 days a week, it only takes a few minutes to play each time, the amounts get really big. And what happens is people are faced with their own limitations around money. Where would a check for $10,000 come from? What would I do if I received a check for $10,000? And there's some really profound awareness for people around prosperity and money and how we're limiting ourselves and what would really be possible in our lives if we truly had an abundance mentality, if we truly had money flowing in and flowing through our lives. So it's a really great experience. I want to invite anybody who's interested to join us for that. Like I said, it's free. It only takes a few minutes each time to play, and there are some really profound awarenesses. I know when you and I first met, we were playing in the same kind of game in a workshop environment, and this email and Facebook environment gives us a chance to play it in a really profound way. So, and the other thing, you know, we've covered a lot of ground again. One of my favorite quotes is from Jim Rohn, and it says, "More money will simply make us more of who we really are." And when we ask questions like, who am I? When we tap into our intuition on a really deep level, when we get really clear about what we're here to do and the contribution we're here to make and the purpose that drives us and things like that, if we have more money, if we have more access to financial resources, it's simply a way for us to be able to be more of who we really are. So there is something profound about opening us up to really great possibilities in that area. And again, this game is a way to do that. So just want to invite people to participate in that. And I know you had a chance to play the game, so maybe you have something to add to the experience of what that's like.
Yeah, I loved playing the game in person at the workshop environment, and it was pretty fun. I was actually remembering how we met, and the part I remember the most is Robert's like holding his book, and I'm like, I want that. I'm like, can I have one? Sure, I pretty much took it out of his hand, so I didn't really have a choice.
That's called intuition and action. A combination of intuition and action coming together, right?
So I clearly resonated with the message, and it was super fun to play the game. And Robert, actually, I did sign up for your online, so double check me on your list because I want to make sure I'm on it. And can you please just verbally state the website, because I know this video is going to go up to some other additional people, so can you just verbally say the website link that they can go to?
Sure, and if people are watching the video, you can see underneath my image is my website, robertmacphee.com. It's MacPhee.com. And the actual website for the prosperity game, which is a hidden page, there's not like a link on the main page. It's robertmacphee.com/prosperity. So just the word prosperity, and that'll take you to a page that explains a little bit more about how the game works, has a link to sign up. And again, it's entirely free to play. It does require us to have your email address so that we can send you those checks. But it's not a matter of me getting you on my list so I can spam you. It's really just necessary so that we can send you the emails that are part of the game that allow you to play. So that's what that's all about.
Cool, and Mark just let us know that he has it posted on the event page too. So.
Oh, perfect.
Cool.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm not that hard to find. The only time people have a little bit of trouble finding me is if they're trying to spell my name with an MC instead of an MAC. But otherwise, I'm very accessible. I'm not some, hidden behind 4 gatekeepers kind of guy. If people have questions about the game or the work that I'm doing, they can, reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions that they have.
Cool. Welcome. Awesome. Very cool. That sounds good. Wow, I just said welcome. I don't know why. You're welcome, everyone. That was bizarre. It's kind of weird when you're intuitive.
It's a nice word. There's other words that could have come up out of nowhere that wouldn't be nearly as nice as welcome. So all good.
I think I'm just feeling the impact. You know, it's just so cool, and it's like it's so fun to give from this place of just unconditional love and just watch it. I love seeing the ripple effect. So, thank you so much for being on the show, Robert. You've been fabulous, and unless there's anything else you want to share, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a wrap.
Good. No, thank you for the opportunity, and congratulations again to you for creating this. And I would just say again, as someone who has been going back through the interviews myself, if people are kind of catching this at the tail end, maybe people from my community who didn't hear about it till later, definitely go through, listen to the previous interviews. The whole conversation about intuition is just so valuable and so important and so connected to all of this work that I'm doing, that what you've created is really valuable. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, Robert. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, you guys. All right, well, big virtual hugs to you all, and we will see you for the last and final interview with my dear mother, who is one of my best friends. So I really look forward to sharing her with you guys, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.